Hello and welcome to Building Digital Solutions with Iolantis. I'm Victor Asachi, and together with our special guest today, I will lead you through the topic of why software development lifecycle and its security is a vital part of the product development process. At Iolantis, we help businesses to bridge tech leadership and tech talent gaps with modern technology and software development practices, so you can scale, innovate, and monetize your products and solutions. And today, I invite you to explore the world of secure software engineering with my special guest, Sinan Buyukardes, the head of the security architecture and engineering at Dozen Group. Hello, Sinan, and welcome to Building Digital Solutions with Iolantis.
Hi there, Victor. Yeah, happy to be here.
The same, it's a pleasure having you. If you don't mind, we will start with a brief intro. Could you please share a bit about yourself, about your position, about your company?
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently working at DAZN for the last 2 years. So DAZN is a company for streaming sports sports content, and it's been already more than 2 years that I've been working here. And currently I'm working as head of security architecture and engineering. And we have multiple teams working together to make sure that all the SSDLC process is working fine within the company.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm sure that this whole concept of the software development lifecycle could be quite a new thing to our listeners, especially to startuppers and non-technical people. So if you don't mind, we will start with the question of explaining the concept of the security software development lifecycle and how it differs from the traditional software development processes.
Yeah, that's a good one to start, I think. Yeah, for the SSDLC, or maybe I can start with the SDLC, like normal one, because that was the term being used 10 years ago, I think. So now then the SSDLC came up. So for SDLC process, it's already a nice kind of breakdown of how the software development is broken into multiple pieces, like there are different phases for each and every project and application. It starts with inspection and then goes through the design processes, and then it will be software development. And development is going to be done, and then there's going to be some validation tests. So it's more like there's more like a focus on the functional requirements rather than the non-functional ones. So since that's the reason, the more like the focus was on having something working. And there are some different methodologies as well to support that activity, like Scrum or Kanban, to make sure that you have rapid software development. That is all working fine. But on the SSDLC part, that you also have a kind of an integration with each and every block that I have explained, like from the initial phase to the design and software development and testing, and then through deployment and monitoring, that you always need kind of an integration with security to make sure that you have everything running in your application is already working fine, and there's not much of a threat that you're going to have at the very end of your life cycle development. And to do that, there are quite a lot of things. So as I mentioned, you actually need to integrate a lot of actually need to integrate into all of the steps, and there are multiple ways to do that. So for example, on the inspection side, since there's no code developed, there's no application, but the inspection is there. So within the inspection, you can actually ask, like, have a kind of a security checklist. Hey, this is what's going to be the application doing, like, or what's going to be the problem that we're going to be solving with that, and how the security can be a part of it, or what's going to be the audience of it. Is that a public facing internet, public facing application, etc. So just like a very nice checklist, so that you don't really need to go into details. And at the design phase, you can actually have some kind of threat modeling sessions to make sure that the security review is actually done by the right people for the application, and the people who are developing it is also like kind of integrated into that with that team, and feeling a bit better, or feeling relieved on the security part. And then it goes through the other phases like software development and unit testing. Those are mainly for those are mainly automated stuff for security. So you can automate it and make sure that the code that you're developing is not really, creating a lot of alerts or from on security side. And I think on the mainly on the monitoring and deployment side that for deployment that the companies might have different solutions, but security should be also considered when you're deploying something new, like adding version of an application, for example. And I would say that for the after the deployment phase, it's also important to make sure that your application is running. It has an audience, and that application needs to be running securely. So it doesn't mean that integrating security into like shifting it left. That's the buzzword these days. But shifting left is not going to solve everything unless you do the right thing. So at the very end, that you still need to have a kind of security intake security measurement, which can be like a pen testing application, pen testing the existing application or existing device, or bug bounty programs, anything that you can imagine, to covering all the gaps about the all about the security landscape. So that's, I would say, how I can explain the SSDLC and how it differs from the traditional SDLC.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That sounds like a really complex approach to mitigating risks on every stage of the software development process, the software development lifecycle, right? Even at the stages of the deployment and I guess maintaining the software as well, right?
Yes, that's correct, indeed.
That's amazing. Well, you've already covered so many things, so many possible risks and challenges that I cannot but ask you about those challenges. Talking about the today situation, right? What are the main security challenges that companies mostly facing during the software development, and is there a way to solve them effectively?
So I think they like there are multiple challenges for the company. So first one is that let's assume that there's a quite a corporate company, that there's a security team, but you need to have the engagement with security team with all the other teams, like developers or the other like divisions in the tech environments, to make sure that the security measurements are already going to be consumed and the policies are going to be adhered to. So that's one of the challenge I can see, and the other ones are like maybe it's for a startup, for example, that they don't even have anyone to look at the security related issues, because the main focus is all on the feature and deploying it to the market as
Yeah.
soon as possible. So that's another security threat, that if you don't have anyone, that you don't really know what can go wrong and from a security point of view. So that's another issue, I would say. And also the also related to that one. So since we might have lack of people or no people, and which means that we're also going to have a bit of an issue with the guidelines or policies. So if you don't have a secure coding guideline, then it's going to be a bit challenging for everyone to nicely develop the code, especially also without the automated checks and even each and every software development step, let's say iterations. So those are the missing bits, and that's becoming an issue for companies, I would say.
Totally agree with you on that. I would also say that people should treat the security as one of the main features of their products, I guess. Consider it as a feature, which is one of the most burning questions of a lot of users today. A lot of people are worried about their data privacy. They're worried about data breaches. They're worried about the possibility of some marketing materials being shown a little too much in front of them, right? So that's one of the features. So please, to the listeners, shout out to you. Please don't forget that security is also a great feature and you should definitely plan it. All
Yep.
right, but talking about the ways to solve the problems with the security and well, overcoming those challenges, are there any kind of a security tools that are must-haves that are not really necessary for discovering the vulnerabilities and fixing them immediately?
Mhm. So yeah, if you're as we're talking about the security testing tools, so there are different tools available online now. So there are a lot of vendors as well. So if we if so for the static code analysis, for example, that you can simply say that all right, I have just pushed this code. So is it still fine? Is it or does it introduce any kind of new issue from a security point of view? So that's one of the checks, and that's called the static scanning. And there's also another term called dynamic scanning. So they're called SAST and DAST. So in the DAST one, that you can actually deploy the application and make sure that it's still running securely, because during the static one, you may not be able to detect all the issues. But there's another thing that which is actually a bit of shifting it to the left. So before the code is being pushed, like when the developers are already working on it, you can actually identify the issues with those applications. So when the code is ready, but you haven't pushed it to the version control system yet, then there are some checks which can do exactly the same thing on the portal, and gives you the results in your integrated development environment. So that's also a very nice way to fix issues. Because as an example, for like let's say that there's some sensitive data being pushed to the version control system, and after that point you have to make sure that that data is removed, that's rotated with a different secret, and put into somewhere safe, not to the repository itself. So it's a lot of work. But instead, you can actually do the same check, and if there's anything sensitive, before pushing it to the server, that you can actually change it and fix it on the go, even before you do anything to push the code to the server. So that's quite a useful term, I think, and it's saving a lot of time. As I mentioned, like you're gonna have to do the same thing. Sorry, the output is the same, but the effort that you're spending is like 3 or 4 times more if you don't shift it to the left side. So that's I think that's I think the example that I can give to make sure that the code scanning tools and the security tools are also utilized nicely.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing those tools. Am I getting correctly that most of these tools involve automation of the processes? So that's why you are actually spending less effort on those things that could have taken a lot of manual man hours, I guess.
Yeah. So there's a lot of automation possible. So within the continuous integration and continuous deployment life cycles, that you can actually have a step for security as well, and to make sure that if everything is still going well with the new version of the code. So yeah, that's quite a good improvement already within the pipeline, that you can also define what should be like if there's any, like you can also define that if there's any critical security issue, I would like to block this pipeline, and it's not going to be deployed to production, for example. So there are a lot of possibilities with the security, and yeah, that's one of the part that we can, I mean, any company can solve easily. So it's um it's going to be quite a topic, like the DevOps or DevSecOps. It's quite a topic at the moment, and you can actually build a kind of nice pipeline with very less amount of time. So there are nice tools, nice commercial tools available, which is going to give you that option, and also some open source ones with some limitations, of course.
That's amazing. Thank you. And just more question to clarify things here. It normally takes only the initial setup, right? The things later on go automatically. So you even spend less efforts later on. You just monitor things. Am I getting it right?
Yes, you're monitoring things, but monitoring things means that the software development or SSDLC or SDLC has been finalized. So you have everything, you have everything deployed and the code is pushed. So while you're monitoring it, which is mainly called the dynamic testing or the pen testing, which means that it's going to take a lot of time for someone for the security team to find it. I mean, it's mainly automated, as you said, so it's not going to take a lot of time, but it's going to take a lot of time for development teams to find the issue and fix it. And yeah, if you're working, and also you also need to be aware that you need to be having the mapping between the application and whom to reach out, all the proof of, sorry, all the point of contacts. And so that's also taking so much time. So that's why the if you go to the right hand side of the life cycle development, then like it's more likely that you're going to spend more time to fix the issues. So that's the I think the consequence when you spend less time with the at the very beginning.
Totally agree. Yes, thank you so much for clarifying that. All right. Well, yeah, as we have already touched based upon the topic of creating new features, evolving products, and well, things that most business owners normally want to have instead of getting deeper in the product, right? They normally expect the product to dynamically evolve, offer new functionality. And how do you balance all those things? The fact that well, people are requiring new features. Business owners are expecting repeat product development. How do you balance that with the SSDLC and these complex and well thought approach of it?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's I think a very good point. So the balancing is it might be a bit hard for some of the organizations, especially if they're just taking care of security related issues. If they have just like after some point, if they have started to tackle with the security issues, especially, but to do so to make sure that it's not going to be really break having an impact on the deployment, because that's also called the deployment friction many times. So to have less friction or no friction, you always need to make sure that you have the right adoption from the company. So it might be, you know, the security awareness trainings, which is going to be for the general audience, and also for the application security related trainings to the technical people. So you have to make sure that the level of knowledge is always up to date, and you can also create some policies and make sure that it's been adhered by the developers and other people. And also for this for your question, I think it's not only between the development team and the security team. So it's like a wider it's like a question which is going to be addressing the wider part of the organization. So it's also something important for product people, for program managers to understand, hey, where is security, or at which phase of the project, that what kind of a control that I need to have with security, so that it's not so that this process is going to be native and quite fluent at some point to, and it won't be really seen as a friction. So that's the kind of the balancing between the you know quick deployments to the production, and also having the security measurements at the same time. But as I mentioned, yeah, it's a bit it might be tricky to have that balance. So as a security team, it should be always on the focus to make sure that the content that security team is consuming, sorry, security team is creating, is going to be consumed nicely by everyone, every party in the company.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I get it. So if I will try to conclude the things from like create a takeaway from this point. So if the SSDLC is well thought and well implemented, it's never going to be a friction and not going to prevent the product from quick evolving and from repeat development, right?
Yes, yes, that's definitely correct. Yeah, If we start from if you start at the beginning with the right steps, and if you have a plan for security measurements, yes, it's definitely going to be a good way to move forward.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, and in our times of stricter and stricter regulations, I guess it's even well, I guess more actual, more important to business owners and companies. And if we jump into those, the regulations, the new norms of data privacy and security, there are new frameworks appearing now and then. Well, how do regulatory frameworks influence the adoption of SSDLC, and what are the key regulations, say general at least regulations that we should consider when creating software products?
Yeah, so I think for the regulatory frameworks, it's quite useful for from a security point of view, because if you look at those there, so from my point of view, the regulatory framework and adhering to it or getting a certification from them is like multiple steps. It's like only two steps. Like you have to provide that you have the policies, you have the right stuff that you're doing, and you need to provide proofs of it, and then you're definitely going to be going to be having no issues with that framework. So it's more like policies and policies and proofs. And in that case, if you have in that case, if you have a good understanding of what are the best possible policies for the company based on what kind of a business they have, what kind of a business they are, like if they're in the health industry, if they're in the streaming industry, or completely something different, like maybe in military. So there are definitely different compliancy regulatory compliancy frameworks. So that's where the security can be a bit more adopted, I think, for the whole company, because there you have to pass that audit, you have to pass that frameworks checks to make sure that your company is one step ahead of your competitors, right? Because if you have that kind of a certification from a framework, then it's always nice that you can share it in your website, and you can also claim that, hey, we already have the nice certifications. And it might be like, depending on your business, like if you're selling products, if you're a B2B, then it's also becoming more critical, so that the certification makes much more sense, because definitely you're going to be able to sell your product to the other company. So that's definitely an important topic. And I can give you an example from ISO, for example, and PCI DSS. So they're mainly there for they're mainly there for many years, actually. So it's also quite comprehensive. So ISO has just increased the number of controls to 114. So it's increasing every other year. And that those ones are definitely good for security teams, as you know, the policies that are going to be created are going to be adopted by the whole company. And if you and also for those regulatory frameworks, you need to make sure that you're already adhering to those, and providing the right kind of proofs to the auditors. So that's I would say that the regulatory framework is on the side of security, and that's definitely very useful.
That's great.
Even for, like, it's an external audit, as it's called, but it can be even used as an internal audit to see that, hey, what are the missing bits and how can we address it. So that's quite useful.
So it doesn't only regulate, but it also provides guidance of what is missing and what you should be aiming at.
Yeah, indeed.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. Yes, the regulations are the norms, right, that we are expecting to have implemented. But what about the trends, the current trends in security that companies should be aware of? Maybe these trends are impacting SSDLC practices already.
Main trend at the moment is AI for almost all the businesses, and also for security as well. Because in security, that ideally you should be able to understand the unusual activities for device, for users, and for any kind of endpoint, actually, let's say, also for the IoT devices. And security and sorry, the AI-powered security can really help that, because it's going to have a way to interpret all kind of behaviors. So that's something I think it's quite emerging at the moment, and I started seeing some solutions from different companies on that. But on the other side of the fence, like AI is also being used for adversaries a lot. There are some reports that it's been actually actively used for adversaries rather than the defense lines. So it's becoming a challenge. Maybe in 2 years or something, if we can repeat the same session, that we're going to be talking about something completely different, or we will have more results this way. So yeah, it's also like it's also something new, and yeah, every company or every security team is trying to keep their pace with that, and understanding how to secure the environment from AI kind of attacks. And yeah, the another thing that I can mention is more like workload security, and within the workload security, which is something new, but not that much new. It's more like the dynamic assessment, but it's going to be dynamically assessing everything on the device, on the running compute resource, or anything you can name it. So it might be in the cloud, it might be in the device, and I think that kind of monitoring system is also very important for IoT. So that's probably can be used utilized nicely.
Yeah, totally agree. Especially on the AI thing, you never know what risks are actually emerging with giving the AI access to your internal information and systems, and at the same time letting the AI speak to your customers. I remember that case with AI giving away the Windows license keys, right? Because somebody had an idea of saying that my grandma used to read me out the license keys, and it actually worked out great for this person. But you can never expect such a case at once. So yeah, totally agree. All
Yeah.
right. Well, got one more question. I've heard about the application security posture management, which is ASPM, right? And could you explain this idea and the specifics of this implementation?
Yeah, of course. So we had actually different terms like CSPM, like Cloud Security Posture Management, or they are actually getting more. So we have the KSPM for Kubernetes, but always the rest is the same. So it's Security Posture Management. I think at some point we're going to have XSPM to have everything like a more centralized view. But the idea of ASPM is like, so in the development lifecycle, that every company has a different style. So maybe some of the part has been outsourced, and some software part is being outsourced, and that's completely kept outside of their repositories or version control system. So what the ASPM does is like it's trying to centralize everything. So from the beginning, so as I mentioned, so it's already saying that, sorry, it's already going to have a check on your IDE, on your development environment, to say that, hey, there are some issues, there are some secrets involved, which is just before coding, sorry, just before deploying the code to your server. But if you have multiple divisions developing application, and they're deploying it to different version control systems, let's say that you're using GitHub, but somebody else is using GitLab in the same organization, or in the outsourced organization, so you won't really have quite a chance to put a kind of a security checklist in the pipeline, right? But what ASPM does is like it has integrations with everything. So it has the integration with all the version control systems. They have their own static analysis tools, dynamic analysis tools. It's still in progress, but for static analysis tools, it's a very stable business at the moment. So they can provide the same thing, or they can just say that, hey, if you have the license for that tool, that you can use it right away, because it's just a API call to the other side, actually. But that means they're integrating everything, and you will be able to have a holistic view of what are the application threats at the moment in your in your company. And you can also segregate the applications and see what's the critical ones. And also, like, there are, like, the static part is static code scanning is there, and secret scanning. So you can use different tools, and there are also open source ones, by the way. So within you can also embed the open source solutions into the ASPM, and making sure that you have a nice pipeline just before going to deployment. But the idea is simple. I think with every security posture management tool, that is a centralized view. So it gives you every detail about your application, so you're not missing some piece of code which is developed by somebody else, and you have a full view of the landscape. And then it's going to be up to the business owner to, going ahead and remediating remediating the critical and high ones, for example. So, but yeah, the idea is, quite nice.
So, yeah, thank you so much. That sounds really amazing. I mean, like, getting a holistic view of all of the possible and immediate threats at the single dashboard, I guess, right? So is it something like this? It's just something great. Does it take long to integrate all of the things within such a system, or it normally just takes some kind of initial setup, and then later on it's actually easier to control of the systems for scanning, monitoring?
That's a good question. So actually, since it's a very competitive market, the vendors are making it quite easy for everyone to onboard their repositories. Because most of the time, like, so if you have cloud accounts, for example, or the GitHub repositories, that you have an organization, so you don't need to do anything one by one. So you can do that once. You can do the operation one time, like, as long as you use the tool. Let's say that you're going to use the tool for 2 years, and you might be jumping on something else. So you do it once and you keep it for 2 years, which is, I think, paying off, I would say, even if it's a manual work. So that's also and having said that, it's really very intuitive to onboard new stuff there, which is which is good. So there's not much of an initial investment needed at the moment. It was like that before. I've seen that some of the applications are just installed on site to some different workstations, and then being controlled, and there you're going to have a lot of network related issues too. But now everything is based on cloud, and it's quite easy to integrate those solutions. I think it's like within a week or something, the dashboard is going to be ready, probably.
That's amazing. That actually brings the business owners, non-technical, non-security people closer to the possible security threats and to the possible reports of those threats and the ways to mitigate them. Thank you so much. I know that today Internet of Things is also getting more and more complicating, right? And at the same time, it's getting actually not complicating, but complicated in terms of the systems and ecosystems of the products and hardware and software at the same time. But still, it is getting closer and closer to people, and there are so many solutions emerging today. And to be honest, we have lots of questions from the IoT startups and IoT established businesses concerning the security issues. And do you think that SSDLC is something that is particularly crucial for IoT startups and IoT businesses in general?
Yeah, indeed. That's so I would it would be weird that if I don't say if I say it's not crucial. But I think before we answer the question, maybe we can go into the characteristics of IoT. So as you said, it's a very complex setup, and most of the IoT devices are connecting to the internet directly. Some of them are not. Some of them are just they have a main hub. They're just connected through there. It's more like a router in your home in your home, like a home router. But the biggest problem with the IoT devices is like you need to be aware of what kind of the data that you're processing with the device, right? So that's becoming quite a topic at the moment, because as you mentioned, that there are some breaches every other day there are different vulnerabilities. There are zero-day vulnerabilities as well. So that's that methodology should be implemented nicely on the application side. And also, I would say that it's so since you can it's actually crucial because with the SSDLC you can also go ahead and have some kind of certification with the regulatory frameworks as well, which is going to make you which is going to like you present your company in a nicer way so that you will have all the boxes ticked, and you can go ahead with different businesses and probably and with more regulatory frameworks or compliance, that more countries and more regions are or continents are going to be open to you, because that's also how it works. So for example, if you don't have ISO, probably that's going to be an issue for the business. So that's the reason I would see that this is the SSDLC part is quite crucial for even for startups, as the risks are too high, especially for IoT devices. Like, for example, if we talk about different applications, let's say that like public-facing applications, let's think of web applications, public-facing ones, or maybe internal ones, or just local applications that only a couple of people are using. So that's how you can just prioritize the risk. And IoT is always the highest risk in that case. So because it's already communicating to all kind of different networks, and also it's connected to IoT directly. There are some websites they can quickly tell you that which devices are connected to the internet and which ports are open, and you can try brute force attack on anything, which is making the IoT setup much harder, I would say.
That's great. Well, now that you are saying, I'm getting more and more worried about my smart home system if it's going to get my data breached. But jokes aside, it's true that IoT is getting a big thing in terms of security and vulnerabilities, and you have already given some of the examples. Any more specific kind of vulnerabilities that IoT business owners should be aware of?
There's quite a lot of them. So especially if you're discussing about the IoT devices, so the main characteristic of the deployment is like there's probably going to be hundreds of devices or thousands of devices, right? Because you especially for the for different use cases, maybe you're going to have a lot of small devices as well. And since those devices are all connected to the internet, it's actually a good enabler for a DDoS attack, because if you have the chance to enforce into all those devices in a way, in an automated way probably, and then you can use them for a DDoS attack very, very nicely. So it's going to be kind of a botnet to everyone, and therefore you can target anything. You can target federal agencies. You can target a different company or anything that you wanted, which is just like an increasing risk. So to make sure that you don't have this kind of an issues, you always need to have the security measurements in place, and also more importantly, you need to make sure that you have the monitoring in place, because there shouldn't be any unexpected activity, like unusual activity, to going to complete the different malicious websites, for example. That's not what your IoT device is designed for. So you need to make sure that the monitoring is in place and alerting is in place too. And the other issue which might happen is crypto mining, for example, which is also an emerging threat over the last years. So an IoT device is a complete resource in a nutshell. So that can be used for anything, and also you can be used for crypto mining too. And with that crypto mining activities, that's going to be possible for someone to have a huge profit over your IoT devices. That's another big issue, and probably it will also it will also have some issues. Sorry, there will be also some issues with the functionality of the device too. So therefore, as I mentioned, with the botnet attacks, like monitoring the IoT device is becoming much more important. So that's definitely something the people should be focusing on. And yeah, for the for the other attacks, as I mentioned, the data breaches is quite important because it's really some of them are really utilizing some critical data like PIIs, for example, and therefore you need to make sure that all the communication is encrypted, all the data stored is encrypted as well. Because there's a nice like by the way, I also have an embedded systems background almost over a decade that I was working on similar solutions. So from my point of view, an embedded device is more like enhanced version of IoT. So it of course has much more different capabilities. But ideally they are the same thing. So if you have a firmware update and if you brick the device, then it's gone. So the idea is the same. And IoT, I know that the same risk is there for IoT too. And yeah, so the encryption part and also the generic physical attack is like, hey, how can someone just read all the data in memory or read all the data or dump all the flash disk, for example. So those are the physical issues that you need to solve, and you're while doing the design, for example, and making sure that there won't be any kind of external access to memory or to the disk, and to any of the peripherals that you're going to be using with the IoT device, like sensors probably. So that's also quite important.
Oh, thank you so much. We're almost out of time here. So my last question is going to be, so considering all of the vulnerabilities you mentioned, what advice would you give to business owners and people planning their software development lifecycle in terms of IoT products? What should they do and what should they possibly start with in this case?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's as we were talking, so it's mainly related to like going back to the same discussion, like secure by design and adoption of all the security measurements is definitely one thing. But I guess it's also very challenging for a startup to focus on security issues because the target is mainly there for being profitable or at least surviving for another couple of years. So therefore, security might be neglected in that case. But I think in the long term that it's going to be quite important because most of the times the entrepreneurs are focusing on the feature and the cost set for the IoT device, right? So that's where the secure by design is secure by design or secure at the very initial phases becoming important because at that stage the security should be one of the aspects when you're selecting a chip or a device. So if you don't have the security module, like hardware security module, for example, so it's external, it's probably going to pose you a risk at some point. So therefore, I think it's quite crucial to start with the security as well, and having that as an aspect. Like I'm not saying that it's the most important thing because you have to provide the feature. You're going to be addressing a lot of problems with your customers. So you have to have a good. You already have a good targeted audience that you're going to be utilizing the tool for, but the security can't be really neglected in that case because it's also going like the secure device is also going to give you more chance for endurance as well. So if the device is not breached or something, or if you can't just read everything in the disk, that it means that you don't have to replace the device, right? So it's also something that the entrepreneurs need to consider for long term. Like security is kind of a long term solution, and within each and every life cycle of the software developments, it should be considered and applied. And I'm guessing that this is going to be a much better approach because I'm already aware of the fact that there are devices and there's going to be too many devices, right, with IoT, and even like 50 cents or $1 difference per device is going to make a huge difference. So I know the issue, but of course focusing on security is going to save you some time and effort and energy at the in the long term. So that's
Totally
that's my
agree. Not only talking about the time and the effort, but also talking about the possible monetary losses, right? According to the latest norms and regulations, there are so many risks of being fined for not retaining some of the norms and regulations, for not implementing them. So that's a thing that is actually a part of our product development lifecycle that is today. You actually have to worry about it, not to pay later. So totally agree. And thank you so much for the insights. So many of them, and I actually have a lot of questions to go with, but I understand that we're short of time. So thank you so much for being a part of our conversation. We've explored the world of software development lifecycle and the level of security that should be implemented on every single level, right? On every single part of this cycle. Security is the thing that should be implemented by design. And I guess it's definitely clear to our listeners why you should think of security at the start of your product development. And if you're not yet thinking about it, you should definitely be doing so. And I thank everyone who will be listening to this podcast. And if I understand that we haven't covered some of the questions, or possibly lots of questions that you may have, feel free to reach out to us so that we could have Sinan answer them, so that we could also cover them. Feel free to reach out to us to our email, hello@iolantis.com. And should you have any more questions or information required, feel free to reach out to our website, which is iolantis.com, to our LinkedIn, which is Iolantis, and YouTube channel for more videos like this. And again, Sinan, thank you so much for being a part of this tech leadership video and session today. So many cool insights and so much useful advice for the business owners and the startuppers. Hope they will find it useful and replan it if necessary and implement the security by design of their products. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, it was a great session. Thanks for hosting it.
Thank you so much.